Welcome to the Audiobook Chamber, where ideas speak and insight transforms. Here, we believe that true wealth begins in the mind, and every great book opens a new doorway to that inner abundance. In this session, we journey through Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, a fascinating exploration of how our decisions, though seemingly logical, are often guided by hidden biases and emotional forces we barely notice. Ariely shows us that humans are not the rational beings we imagine ourselves to be, but we're predictably irrational in beautifully systematic ways. This isn't a summary. It's an experience, crafted to illuminate, challenge, and inspire through the timeless wisdom of its pages. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and step with us into Predictably Irrational, brought to life by the Audiobook Chamber. We like to believe our choices are rational, that every decision we make comes from reason and careful thought. But as Dan Ariely reveals, that belief is more illusion than truth. Our minds are constantly shaped by context, emotion, and subtle cues we barely notice. The price on a tag, the order of a menu, even one cleverly placed decoy option, all of these can quietly steer what we think we want. We don't choose based on absolute value. We choose in comparison to what's around us. And often, our rational explanations come after the choice, stories we tell ourselves to make our emotions sound logical. This isn't a flaw, it's part of being human. But awareness changes everything. When we learn to spot these invisible influences, we start to see the strings behind our own behavior. And in that moment, we gain something powerful, the ability to choose with intention, not impulse. Few words capture our attention like free. We'll drive miles for a free coffee or choose an inferior option just because it costs nothing. Dan Ariely reveals that the allure of free isn't about money, it's about emotion. Zero cost feels safe, risk-free, effortless. Yet in reality, free often carries hidden prices, lost time, wasted attention, or diminished quality. Our instincts can hijack our reasoning, making us blind to trade-offs we would normally avoid. The next time something seems irresistible simply because it's free, pause. Ask yourself, am I really gaining, or am I paying in ways I haven't considered, with energy, focus, or opportunity? Recognizing this subtle force doesn't just make us smarter consumers. It gives us a different kind of freedom, the freedom to act deliberately, to see beyond instinct, and to reclaim control over choices we might otherwise make unconsciously. Our minds are wired to seek reference points, and the first number we encounter, a price tag, a salary offer, or even a statistic, becomes a powerful anchor. This initial figure shapes how we perceive everything that follows. Dan Ariely shows that even arbitrary numbers can subtly influence our judgments. Once anchored, we measure value, make choices, and form opinions in relation to that starting point, often without realizing it. What seems like careful evaluation is really comparison against a number that may be entirely irrelevant. The lesson is simple but profound. Question the first number you're presented. Recognize how anchors shape your decisions, just as first impressions shape perception. Awareness is the key. By seeing the invisible pull of these anchors, we regain clarity and prevent our judgments from being quietly swayed by numbers that should have no power over us. We live in two overlapping worlds, the social and the market. In the social world, we give gifts, favors, and acts of kindness freely, driven by connection and goodwill. In the market world, we exchange money for goods and services, calculating value and cost. Dan Ariely shows that trouble begins when these worlds collide. Asking for payment for a favor transforms generosity into a transaction. What was once warm and relational suddenly feels cold and contractual. Social bonds weaken, trust erodes, and meaning is lost. The lesson is clear. In life and work, honor the social first. Lead with connection, empathy, and trust before introducing market expectations. Teams and communities thrive not just on numbers or efficiency, but on the invisible glue of social norms. Awareness of this balance allows us to navigate both worlds with intelligence and heart, preserving both relationships and value. We like to believe our future selves will be more disciplined, more focused, more capable, but reality disagrees. Dan Ariely's research on procrastination reveals a simple truth. Our present self craves comfort, ease, and avoidance, while our future self bears the cost. Deadlines, schedules, and structures are not punishments. They are shields against our own weakness. They protect us from the illusions of control we tell ourselves, ensuring that important tasks get done before our laziness intervenes. The lesson is profound. Structure is not the enemy of freedom, it is its foundation. By creating systems that guide our actions, we reclaim time, energy, and self-respect. Procrastination fades not through willpower alone, but through the intelligent design of our environment, aligning our present behavior with our future goals. Awareness turns discipline from struggle into strategy. Once we possess something, a mug, a home, or even an idea, our perception changes. Dan Ariely calls this the endowment effect. We instinctively overvalue what is ours, believing it to be worth more than it truly is. Ownership transforms objects into extensions of our identity. A simple mug becomes my mug, a project becomes my idea, and suddenly, letting go feels like losing a part of ourselves. This attachment can blind us, causing us to hold on to things, habits, or beliefs that no longer serve us. True freedom, Ariely reminds us, isn't in accumulating more possessions or ideas, but in seeing clearly, detaching value from ownership. By recognizing how attachment distorts judgment, we gain the ability to choose intentionally, letting go when necessary, and reclaiming both clarity and control over what truly matters. We like to think markets are fair, that prices reflect value, and that logic drives the system. But as Dan Ariely reveals, markets are not perfectly rational. They are mirrors of human emotion. When fear spreads, people sell in panic. When greed rises, they buy without thought. Stories, not spreadsheets, move the crowd. Each boom and crash isn't just economics. It's psychology unfolding on a global scale. Ariely's insight cuts deep. Numbers may appear objective, but behind every trade is a mind swayed by bias, pressure, and desire. The illusion of market logic crumbles the moment we realize that humans, not formulas, set the rhythm. To see clearly in the chaos, step back from the noise. True wisdom begins where emotion ends, and understanding this difference is what separates reaction from reason, speculation from insight, and survival from success. Expectation doesn't just shape experience, it creates it. Dan Ariely's experiments reveal a fascinating truth. Our minds don't simply record reality, they rewrite it. When people were told a wine was expensive, they genuinely tasted it as better. When a placebo pill cost more, it eased pain more effectively. The story we believe changes the sensation we feel. Our brains are powerful storytellers, constantly filling in gaps with meaning. Expect pleasure, and you'll likely feel it. Expect disappointment, and you'll find it, even in beauty. This isn't deception, it's perception sculpted by belief. Ariely's lesson is simple but profound. Guard your expectations. They can heighten experience or quietly distort it. When we learn to see without assumption, to taste, feel, and think without bias, reality reveals itself in full color. The world becomes clearer, richer, and far more honest than the stories we tell ourselves. We all like to believe we're honest, that integrity guides our every choice. But as Dan Ariely discovered, most of us bend the truth more often than we'd like to admit. His research shows that dishonesty rarely comes from malice, it comes from rationalization. We cheat just enough to gain an advantage, yet not so much that we feel like bad people. It's a delicate dance between self-interest and self-image, and our minds are expert negotiators. What keeps us honest isn't fear of punishment, but gentle reminders of who we want to be. Signing a form before filling it out, recalling a moral code, or simply being reminded of our values can drastically reduce dishonesty. Integrity isn't a fixed trait, it's a daily practice. Every choice, big or small, either sharpens or dulls that inner compass. Ariely reminds us, the true test of character isn't in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments when no one's watching and honesty still matters. The goal, Ariely reminds us, isn't to become perfectly rational. It's to understand our irrationality deeply enough to work with it. Our minds are not machines of logic, but living tapestries of emotion, memory, and imagination. We make mistakes, yes, but those same flaws are what make us empathetic, creative, and deeply human. Predictable irrationality isn't a curse to be fixed, it's a pattern to be understood. It reveals how we think, how we love, how we fail, and how we grow. When we stop demanding perfection and start observing our nature with curiosity, life begins to change. We design better choices, fairer systems, kinder relationships, not by erasing imperfection, but by embracing it. Ariely's greatest lesson is not about logic, but about compassion, to understand ourselves not as broken calculators, but as beautifully imperfect beings, learning to make sense of our own hearts. At its core, Predictably Irrational is not a book about numbers or experiments. It's a mirror. It asks us to look inward, not to judge our irrationality, but to understand it with empathy. Every bias, every small mistake, every impulse we regret is a clue, a message from the hidden mind beneath logic. Dan Ariely reminds us that emotion and reason are not enemies, but partners in an uneasy dance. When we learn to see our irrationality clearly, we stop being ruled by it. Awareness becomes power, the quiet kind that shapes wiser choices and deeper understanding. To know ourselves is to reclaim freedom, the freedom to act with clarity, to choose with intention, and to design a life not of perfect control, but of meaningful awareness. Because the greatest intelligence isn't cold logic, it's understanding the beautiful, unpredictable mind within us all. You've been listening to Predictably Irrational, brought to life by the Audiobook Chamber. If this journey sparked your thoughts, subscribe and explore more from our curated playlists, from mindset to wealth, entrepreneur, and power, each designed to expand the way you think, live, and grow. Because here, at the Audiobook Chamber, we believe that true wealth begins in the mind.